Hello, everyone. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of where I'm currently in Shepparton, in Victoria. I'm on Yorta country. I'd like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge you all, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are watching this evening. The theme tonight is what calls us and how to answer that call to country. How does that happen? I'd like to start explaining who I am and what I do. What you've already said in the introduction made me sound so awesome. I don't think I need to repeat myself. So, I guess, how do I answer that call to country and what it means for me is working in this area with deaf and hard of First Nations people or mob with disabilities it's quite complex, this space, and quite unique. The work that I do in my professional work, my philanthropy and advocacy work can vary. And that makes it difficult to answer what the call to country is for me. My work involves being invited onto country by various people all over the nation. And often the work's really complex. And the work that I do, I need to be very respectful of the long list of cultural protocols. The cultural protocols and cultural practice for me is language and communication. It's vital. It's a key component to how we converse and respect language on country. Let me give you an example as to what I mean. If you can envisage my work in this space being the answer to the call to country and what that means, I was asked many years ago to work with a person who was on remand. I was asked because the communication had broken down for this deaf person. This person had been on remand for a long time. He was worried about family. His family were worried that he was going to be there indefinitely. And he was often left there and totally neglected. When I arrived to work with him, I thought there was something that just didn't gel. There was a difficulty there, and I thought to myself, what is that? In a cultural context, you need to go to support a person to ensure that there's that safety net. Who the spokesperson is that speaks for them in their family. So I went to his community on country, sat down and listened to the senior men and women of that community who asked me a lot of questions. And we tried to work out what the communication breakdown was through the court process and the remand process. Cultural protocols say that you need to speak to senior women first. They were not happy with me working with him because he was a male, and I was fine with that. If there was a male that could work in the space, I would definitely support a male deaf or hard of hearing person to do that. in terms of helping and translating information. The senior men, including this man's father, were willing because they knew that I was the right person that would follow the cultural protocols, even though I was female. So when I worked in this space, I listened to people on country. I looked at the environment he was in visually and getting information from a whole number of people there. And then I went to work with this man in the legal setting with his legal issues, in the justice system, and I also worked with the security guards. I worked with his barrister, lawyers, the judge themselves, just to make sure that they were aware of the communication needs, because we had a person here using an Aboriginal Sign Language system, not Auslan. I had to try and bridge that language gap from the Western law system to the cultural law and practice, and how to bridge those things using spoken language interpreters from the community and from the family, because I needed to understand that family and that gentleman's case. If we use the Western system, we needed to make sure that the understanding was there of how the Western system, legal system, worked to ensure that this person was not locked up forever. At the time, I didn't want to sit on country in the bush and do this work. It wasn't proper. So I had to go out to the senior men and women and talk to them and explain why the Western legal system was not the same as a bush court. Because access to language in this case, we needed to ensure that we facilitated both languages and cultures in the most appropriate way. And this case took a long time, but the outcome of it all was the appreciation of language, culture, cultural knowledge, and what it meant for a deaf or hard of hearing person and their family. So to be able to understand language, culture, cultural law and protocols, and the justice system took a lot of communication that sometimes went way over people's heads. So the call to country is also about what happens after the job, after the court case is done and after the person is either released, whether they continue to stay in jail, what happens to their life? Do they go back on country? I was very fortunate to let you know that this gentleman was able to go back onto country. He's currently on country, living with his family, and he's leading his hard of hearing nephew, teaching him cultural law and practices and raising him even though he's deaf and hard of hearing himself. So he's been able to take on that knowledge and pass it down the generation to the next generation. So the call to country, what it means for me is cultural responsibility done in a safe way, and how communication often, how communication is important. I often don't have interpreters with me. I can use pen and paper. I can use visual gestures. I can use Aboriginal Sign Language. I can get family members to help me in that process of communication. I'm very fortunate. I'm almost finished. My cultural obligation is to make sure that access is there for people on country, those that are deaf and hard of hearing that have no language, that may have no Auslan, may have no spoken language, but have access to their preferred way of communicating. My philanthropy work and advocacy work continues in my role when I'm on country. I try to spread awareness from the things that I know about country so that I can share the knowledge and thoughts I have. So I thank the interpreters for tonight for keeping up with me. And I thank you all for your time in listening to why I'm answering the call to country. I think it's an important, vital role that I have as an Indigenous deaf woman.